Hey everybody. Hello. Hope you're having a great day. Welcome to the Growing Gills Book Club. I am Jessica Abel of jessicaabel.com, and I am really excited to be here today talking about the black box, the big scary black box. Looking forward to seeing you show up in comments and see how things are going for you. My first question to you today is after can you see and hear me and everything going okay on the tech side? Because I think we're getting better at this. My next question is I want to hear about your one goal. I want to hear about your what's going on with what we talked about last time, where we talked about three chapters at the same time. I kind of threw that at you because all three chapters, chapters 6, 7, and 8, are all basically about choosing one goal and really about the decide phase of the creative engine. So I want to see what's going on with you with that. I'm seeing people showing up in the comments. That's awesome. Showing up live. Everything seems to be going well. Okay, so take a few seconds to let us know what you're thinking about your one goal. Have you been able to make a decision? If you haven't, what's holding you back? What are the personal criteria that you came up with to help you decide among the various things that are on your list? Today, we're going to talk about how to actually implement that decision. And so, having made that decision is going to be really, really important. If you're feeling behind, if you're not up to this point yet, that is completely okay. But remember, I want to repeat once more all the work we did up to chapter 6, even if you didn't like clean your entire studio and you don't know exactly every single idea you've ever had in your life, that's fine as long as you've done some work on that. You'll have some sense of what your most pressing, current, top of mind obligations are, and you can start making decisions about those. You know, always cycle back. And the whole thing about the creative engine is you can cycle back to the beginning, back to the collect phase, and do more later. So continue with that process, but allow that to happen in the background as you're making active decisions. Do not hold back on deciding. Deciding is the thing that everybody avoids and is so crucial to starting to make really good progress on your creative work. Um, okay, so I'm seeing stuff showing up in chat. Annette says, I'm between two. They are quite different timelines. One I can do mostly on my own, and the other is a longer, more collaborative project. You may need to toggle between those projects if you're waiting for other people to come back to you. That said, again, allotting at least like a chunk of time, like a week at a time to one thing or the other will really, really help you keep those things moving forward. If your collaborative project is more important to you, but you're going to get held up by other people, then there's sometimes reason to like have a sort of backup project. And so I settled on a super simple guardrail project and kept with it. So now I'm picking a super small project. Draw and sketch one panel or scene that I've been thinking about since this time last year. So specifically, and what I'm asking you is you're just wanting to draw one thing. That is your one goal, is to draw one thing. Not one a day, just one thing. Because the one goal is a project goal. So project is the beginning, middle, and end. If you want to draw one thing, I hope you will be done with it in, a few days, and then you can go on to your next goal, and that's totally fine. It's fine if it's really small. It doesn't have to last 6 weeks. But be really clear that when we're talking about one goal, we're talking about a project that may be made up of a series of drawings or something like that, and that's okay. Um, Joke. Joanne is saying writing habit. That is not a project. Writing habit is not a project. You can projectize it by having parameters around what that looks like. So I want to, like, usually what I'll say is like, put writing habit within a container. So you're working on a project of some kind of writing and you want to get to X point with it. You don't necessarily have to have a deadline, like it has to be done in 6 weeks, but like, you want to get to this point. And in the process of getting to that point and working on that one project, part of your process that you're creating for yourself is the habit. You're creating a habit that is like, here's when I'm going to work on this, where I'm going to work on this, how long I'm going to work on this. And that's the kind of stuff we're talking about today in the black box chapter. Julia says, the most interesting thing I've noticed is the way my commissions have been jockeying for my attention, even though they came in a very specific order. Just choosing only to focus on one thing is that actually next is very freeing. It absolutely is. And all those other things that are like bidding for your attention. I had a client I was working with recently who had like 4 or 5 things that were all sort of, they're all pressing, they're all late. There's all stuff that was worrying her a lot. And she had them all on Post-its, like sort of like at the bottom of her to-do list. And whenever she'd work on one, the next one would like call her attention. And so what I told her to do is don't throw those things away. I mean, you need to know that they're there, but you need to go through this process of deciding what your one goal is, put the rest on like a different whiteboard or on a pad of paper, and put it face down on your desk. So when you're looking at it, you're not actually seeing that thing. So if you have a digital system, you do it differently. But the point is, take those other projects out of your view until such time as it's time to like actually address those next things. Christine says, finding a publisher for my novel, which may mean rewrites. Okay, so Christine, that is a good project, but I think the most important thing here is you need to redefine it in terms of your own actions. Finding a publisher depends on somebody else saying yes, and you cannot guarantee that that's going to happen, and so you may not be able to say, I'm finished, because you may not find that publisher in like a reasonable period of time, and you're going to have this big open loop. What you need to do is define your project in terms of what you are going to do. So what are you going to do to find a publisher? You're going to research publishers. You're going to write query letters. You're going to, prepare the manuscript in whatever way it needs to be. Like you need to do those things. When you've done those things, you have finished your job. You have finished your project. You can check it off, done, and move on. There's going to be follow-up because you're going to get responses and so on, but like you have to think about this in terms of what you can do to make sure you have control over it and that you can celebrate your win of finishing the project. Susie says, I decided to focus on growing Gills for a little while. Sounds great. So then defining your one goal, you need to define what success looks like. What does success look like? Figure out what doing growing Gills looks like to you. What's finishing it look like? Does it mean doing something on all of the exercises, finishing reading it, coming to all of the book club meetings? Like define success for yourself. Okay, so Emmeline says, since last July, my one goal has been a sci-fi comic. However, I'm stuck at having the energy and focus to actually do the making the thing. Okay, so this has to do with Project Path, which is what we're doing today, and breaking things down into steps and making sure that the steps you're asking yourselves are possible and that you can achieve them and you can start to feel some power and control over those things. There's also just the exhaustion of kind of facing like, wow, this is going to be hard and I need to buckle down and do it. So you also need to think about like, where are you trying to fit this in your life and do you actually have the energy to do it at that time in your week? Deborah says, I only have a vague notion of what I want my goal to be. I can't seem to define it well enough to move forward. Go to your idea inventory and choose something. Choose something on that list and look at the kinds of parameters I was just talking about. Is it something that you have control over finishing? Is it something that you can finish in a period of time as a beginning, a middle, and an end? Even if it's not incredibly inspiring to you, settling like, I'm going to do this and doing it, following the process through is going to build your confidence and build your understanding of what really speaks to you and what you want to be doing. Allie says, my one goal will be to create a solid sketchbook process and routine that is specific as far as a habit, but it's not a project. So again, as I said, with somebody else talking about writing, you need to projectize that. What does it look like to have that be successful? I mean, do it, 30 days in a row? Does it mean you finish a sketchbook? In the process of reaching a goal with like making some things, you're going to be slotting in your habit in a very particular time and place and, in your routine so that it becomes something that's like part of your like fabric of being. That's what you want to end up with. But in order to get there, you need to give it a container in terms of the one goal process. Now, that said, you can simply build a habit also, and that's not a one goal so much as it is like the main focus of your attention. It's more about creating process than it is about creating product, and it's more about process than project. Like the end result isn't that important. And so you can choose to do that instead. Like you don't have to have, big one goal with like some big outcome. You can just build a habit. And that's fine to do, but then you need to think about it not in terms of an end goal and my one goal and it's this period of time. It's more like my only focus right now is working on building a habit by putting things in at a certain time of day, in a certain parameter, certain amount of time, certain materials, and getting that to the point where it's just like automatic. Like it's like brushing my teeth. If I don't do it, I just feel wrong. Um, okay. Okay, so I'm seeing Syl says, I know my one goal is to write my novel, outline, planned, etc., but it's shorter, not a shorter term project. Should I choose something related but smaller so I can finish it for sure in 6 weeks? I think if you're, especially if you're struggling with like confidence, I think that having a one goal of outlining my novel is something you could do potentially in 6 weeks. Like the outline is the end result. It's not the result of it's not the entire project, but it is a phase or milestone that can be marked at a certain point in time. Doesn't mean you're not going to revise it either, but having a single pass through that, having like a first draft of your first chapter, having something like that, that can be a goal for a period of time. And I think that that's the way you can kind of create a container around the thing that makes sense for you. Alexa says, decided on my one goal, but still having anxiety over not working on other things. Yes, you will, and that will recede over time. I mean, you have to keep looking at them, you know, on a regular basis and saying like, is it really important that I switch my attention to these things, or am I just kind of, is it just shoulds? Is it just shoulds that I should be paying attention to this other stuff? Does it actually matter? Is it actually going to affect the outcome? Um, Christine says, question, this is personal writing, correct? Not making a living stuff. It can be making a living stuff. I mean, plenty of people here are professional writers, and that's the way they make a living. And you still need to have one, you know, a single goal in your professional life as well. My one goal now and for a long time has been very much within my professional life. And it's, you know, it's not some kind of like extra thing, but it is the future focused stuff that I need to develop that isn't day to day business. So day to day business is, you know, showing up and answering my email, or like doing customer service, or, you know, maintaining this and that and the other thing. You know, developing little bits and pieces of stuff. It's reactive, it's small scale, and it doesn't build things bigger. Doing a project like this, doing the book club, is a one goal for me in the sense that it's something that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it is for a purpose. Like it's for something that is bigger than my normal day to day activities. Like a lot of you who are here are new to me. You came into this because I put this thing together, and that's the purpose, is for us to get to know each other, right? That's what it's for. Um, it's the kind of thing that doesn't like land in my pocketbook. You know what I mean? Like I'm not getting paid for this. I'm doing this because I want to help people through this crisis that we're in, but also because I want more people to know about what I'm doing and spread the word about what I'm doing. Which, by the way, if you're here and you want to spread the word about what I'm doing, please do. Please tell people about my book. That would be awesome. Um, but the point for me is that this is a developmental, future focused project. I don't know the end result of it, but I'm pretty sure it's a good idea. So this is a perfect example of what a one goal might be. Okay. All right. I'm seeing stuff here, lots more stuff coming in. You guys need to respond to each other to make sure get the responses that you need. But I think I covered the major points there. Um, Julia has a question about multiple goals. You previously said that we can have a goal for our different life buckets, and I call them domains. And I said three maximum, but I don't remember what the parameters were. Well, they're very personal. That's probably why you don't remember. It's like, what are your life domains, and how much time do you have for projects? Like I said, if you think of this project for me, of putting together this book club, running this book club, supporting all of you guys through all of this stuff, this is a project that is over and above everything else that I do normally, right? And I only have a certain amount of time to do this. And in fact, I was planning to start this 3 weeks earlier than I did start it, but I realized there was no way I could actually do it and maintain it if I started at that point. And so I pushed it down and scheduled it out into the future. So looking at your bandwidth and what's possible and how much an individual project is going to take out of you is important in deciding how many projects can you maintain. And remember, process versus project. So you have processes that are running, they're taking up most of your time, and then you have some extra bandwidth. For some people, it's a very small amount, and for some people, it's quite a lot. Um, and then you can decide how many extra things you can do. Now, the question of domains is really about keeping things in their lane. so that you don't have things competing for your attention in the moment when you're doing them. So that like if I'm doing this, I'm not thinking about some goal I might have for like home improvement, or I mean, I could think about it, but it's not like a direct competition of the kind of activity I'm doing here. And that's the important thing, is keeping your sort of like your cognitive focus in one area at one time. And so you have to kind of think about what that means for you. Anne asks if I'm revising and republishing it. I would buy a hardcover copy, but would wait if you are. I am probably going to revise and republish. It's not hardcover. It's not available in hardcover. It's only available in softcover. It's not very expensive, I don't think, in softcover either. So, you know, you could get it twice and compare. But I don't know when I'm going to do that. I'm doing revisions on it as I'm doing this now, but I'm also looking at my schedule out over the summer and thinking like, my thought was, oh yeah, I'll just do that. Then I'll do the revisions and then I'll republish it and do the audiobook and all the stuff that I want to do with this. But I'm thinking all that stuff's going to move to fall or winter or later. Like I'm going to take all this thinking I'm doing now, make as many notes as I can now, and do it later because I have another big project coming right after this, like right up on the tail of it. Um, okay. Okay. So let's talk about the idea of the black box. So the black box is the metaphor I was using when I wrote this book for like this, the like messy bunch of stuff that you see when you look at your project. Like you think, yeah, I'm going to do that project, and as soon as you look at it, you're like, it's like snakes coming out of the box. Like it's this horrible, you know, big unknown, a giant gap between you and where you're trying to get to. And that is one of the major factors that causes procrastination, because you're like, I don't know what it means to get to the other side of this. I don't know how I'm going to get to the other side of this. Um, and the metaphor I started developing after the book was written, and that is in there a little bit, is the idea of building a path, like laying the stones of a path, laying stepping stones through something, right? So if you can think about this as a path, that what you need to do at this point is to build the project path, break down your project into steps so that you can do one at a time and not think about the whole thing. That is what is going to help you fight procrastination, and in particular perfectionism. That you do have to look at the whole project briefly to understand the like what are all the steps and stages. But then you need to like narrow in your focus just to the next stage that you need to work on, the next phase of the work, and just break that down and just focus on where you're at, because it does you no good, helps you not at all to think about what's going to happen with publication if you're still trying to outline the book, right? It doesn't help at all. And all it does is freeze you up and think about like, oh, well, what if the publisher doesn't like it? Well, who knows, right? You haven't written the thing yet. It's absolutely unknown. And so there's no point in letting yourself get stopped by that. So the three pieces that I go over in the chapter are the idea, first of all, the idea of project versus task, which we've kind of touched on in various ways here. But it's a very, very important concept. The project is made up of multiple tasks. And in the book, I think I call them action steps or actions or something like that, but like basically tasks. And a task is something that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And when it ends, you're done with it, right? You've finished that piece. If you are in the middle of something and you realize you need three other things to be done, it's a mini project. Like it's got multiple steps involved in it, and you have to break those things down and think it through. And I will bet you that like 9 times out of 10, when you're working on something and you're like showing up to work on this thing, and you're like, okay, well, here's my next action. I'm gonna da da da, and then you go, oh wait, what? Oh, and you like get this kind of heavy feeling coming on you, and you get stuck there. It's because there are multiple actions, multiple steps required within what you thought was one thing. And so breaking those things down into multiple steps and going like, oh, it's going to be A, B, and C, even taking a second, little pad of paper on the side and going like, okay, what do I actually need to finish this? Well, I've got to look this thing up. I've got to do that thing. I've got to do this thing. Oh, those are steps. Okay, well, I can do each of those things. And once I do those things, it all gets unblocked and you just kind of flow through it. That is projects versus tasks. And so frequently what stops us is thinking we have a task in front of us when we actually have a project in front of us. Second piece of this is with creative work in particular, there are things that are tasks in the sense they have a beginning, middle, and an end. There's no definable sort of like sub bits within it, like draft a chapter that you can't do in a sitting. Uh, it's just not possible to do that, and you shouldn't expect it of yourself. And for that, what I suggest that you do is you create what I call quota tasks. Quota tasks are periods of time that you're going to work on something. And I highly suggest using time and not word count or like output, so time put in, not, work put out as a defining measure for completing these kinds of tasks. This takes all the pressure off, like output based measures, and puts it where it belongs, which is on your, um, actually sitting down, getting your butt in the chair, and like doing some stuff. So if your task that's in front of you is draft something, or figure out the perspective on this drawing or something, it's going to take you a while. You're going to need several sessions on this thing. Create quota tasks for it of a half an hour, 2 hours, whatever is a easily tolerable amount of time for you, and put those into your calendar, over a period of time, so that you're doing it like 3 days in a row, or like, every other day for 3 weeks, or whatever makes sense to you. And like you have those quota tasks in there. And when you do your hour or whatever it is, you check it off and you're like, whoa, I did it. And you feel great and you move forward. And you aren't focusing on that end product. You're focusing on your action, which is the only thing in the end you can actually control. So that is the idea of a quota task, which is so, so crucial. The final thing here that I want to go over really quickly is the idea of using QTAs to figure out what your actions are and what your next tasks are. So QTAs are questions to answer. QTA, question to answer. And essentially it is you using kind of a 5 whys like process to figure out what's inside a black box of a project, even if it's a teeny weeny little black box, like a little, little minuscule one. Like, how do I do this? Say, well, what does successful look like, for example? Like, what does it look like when this thing is finished? That's a question to answer. Who are people who've done this before? That's a question to answer. Like, there's various ways you can ask questions about something you don't understand, and you can help yourself understand where you can find the answers to those things by asking those questions clearly, if that makes sense. So QTAs are a way to kind of like brainstorm about how to get from point A to point B when there's this giant fog in between and you don't know what's in there. You start like poking at it and figuring out little bits of it. I see Emmeline asking quota task or prototask. Quota as in a quota of time, like an amount of time. That is the word that I'm using, is quota tasks. And this is all in written up in chapter 9, so you can review it there. So that's the, and then the one more little piece of this in terms of breaking it down, because the biggest problem here is how do you break these things down, is breaking the overall project, whatever it is, into large phases and only addressing one phase at a time. So preparation, drafting, revision, production, basically, are the phases for almost everything. So where are you? What phase are you in? What does complete look like? What do you actually need to have in order to move to the next phase? Work backwards, figure out what your quota tasks are that you need to do, ask QTAs about that phase, and kind of break down that one phase you're in and just focus there and don't think about the future ones. So those are all the things that will help there. Okay, so I have 5 minutes or so for questions. Pop them in the box. While I'm waiting for that, I want to remind everybody that I'm running a Creative Engine training on Friday. I have a couple spots left for it. It's going to be really cool. I was working on it all morning. It's going to be really, really cool. And really what it does in some ways is it takes all the stuff that's in Growing Gills and in the Creative Focus Workshop and kind of brings it up a level of abstraction so that you can kind of see how all the parts fit together and like cycle through these different parts, figure out how it all like gels. And next time we meet, it will be like in the middle between the morning session and the afternoon session of the Creative Engine pilot training. So this is not a free training, this is paid, but I'm going to put it in the comments right now. And I don't know that I'm going to offer this again. This is not a thing I'm going to be doing over and over again. I'm doing this basically for research to figure out how this works, um, and what the questions are people have about it. How can I make it stronger? That kind of thing. So I'm not. This is not something I'm going to plan to do regularly. It's kind of a special pilot thing where I'm going to sort of be co-creating with these people who come to the workshop. And I know a few people who are here today are coming, so that's awesome. Thank you. Anyway, check it out. All right, a couple questions here. Athena says, should you fully plan a project with QTAs before starting on it? When is it okay to begin? It is okay to begin as soon as you know what your next action is. As soon as you know what the next thing to do is, do the next thing. Just do the next thing. But while you're doing that, you're thinking about like what's happening down the line. If you know already what all of the actions are in a phase of your project, you don't need to use QTAs. You don't have any mysteries in there. You may have things you're like, you don't know how you're going to actually like execute this thing, but you know what executing it looks like. You don't need QTAs. And you can just plan out the steps of this thing, put them on your calendar and move forward. When you hit a place where you don't know what the answers are, you don't know how to get from point A to point B, that is when you need QTAs. And very much, very importantly, you need to uh, not fully plan your entire project unless it's a very short project before you start. Because if you do that, you'll never start because you'll think, oh, I haven't had it fully planned yet. I'm not ready yet. I haven't gotten there yet. Annette says she may join me even though it's early morning for her. I hope you do. I think it'll be really fun. I had to do it early because we're doing two sessions. There's a morning session, an afternoon session, and I'm doing this in the middle. So that's when it worked out. So I'm sorry for West Coasters. It starts at 6 a.m., but I promise I'll be really exciting. Um, okay. Anne's got to leave. Nice. Thanks for coming, Anne. Sil, the link is here in the chat for the Creative Engine training on Friday. Allison says, is this counterproductive? I sorted my idea debt into categories, but I put things in more than one category, like a quick win that makes money because I thought it would help me pick if some stuff fit in more than one category. Definitely not counterproductive, but I think you might want to do it the other way around, where you only have the list once, but you have the categories multiple times. Like, how many points does this get for quick win? How many points does it get for, show me the money? Like, how does this collectively have lots of points in different categories or different um, criteria? I think is what I call them, and that's how you want to decide. You don't want to decide just on one point. You want to decide on multiple points. Oh, this project, look, this project actually hits all four of the major criteria at a high level. This is clearly a really important project for me to prioritize. Christine's coming. Good to see you there, Christine. I'm excited about that. Okay, so Corrine says, my goal is to spend 30 minutes, 5 days a week to build a library of sketches to use for prints and other projects, watercolor, pen and ink, and other media. Good. And what does a library look like when it's finished? How do you know you're finished and you can move on to a new goal? You need to define that. Julia says, do you need to finish the book to take part in Creative Engine class? Absolutely not. It is, apart from that, I mean, the main thing about the Creative Engine in general is that you already use all the phases of the Creative Engine, and you're going to identify where they're working, where they're not working, what's breaking down, what are the parts that you need to like really beef up, and it'll only make your work through Growing Gills, and if you're in the Creative Focus Workshop, stronger. You definitely do not need to have any prior knowledge to get into this. So Emmeline says, or no, Emmeline says to Allison, you could give each idea a score from each category. Exactly. So the worksheet isn't laid out that way, like it doesn't have columns, which is something I've added later. But yeah, score for each one, add up the scores. That's kind of what I'm thinking about. Julia says, I don't see the link. Okay, I'm going to paste it in again. Here's the link again. Doke. Still says, none of my idea debt are financial gains, not until I finish them and shop them around. Oh dear. That's true of almost everybody when you start something new and perspective. It could in the future make you money, but of course it's really smart not to count on that, not have that be part of your calculus. The show me the money category or criteria is a little bit tricky because people start to feel like they should be making money for something in order for it to be justified doing it. And I don't agree with that at all. Um, it does not need to hit that category. You never know what's going to happen in the future, but it's not, necessary. The main thing it's there for is like if you are a professional already and this thing is going to make you a bunch of money and this thing's not going to make you a bunch of money, that needs to fit into your calculation. It doesn't necessarily need to make the decision for you, but you need to understand what the implications are going to be. If you're not working professionally in the thing you're doing, in the thing you're considering now yet, it's not part of the calculation really. You can always do stuff that's more commercial, but you never know what's actually going to happen. Jim Harmon says the decide portion of the creative engine is gold. Yes, I agree. And this decide portion is partially reflected in the one goal activity that we did last time and what we're talking about today. And so you guys can see how important it is. Like when you get really granular about this stuff, it unlocks an immense power for you. Neil says, my goal is to complete my screenplay and begin adapting my story into a graphic novel or comic. Any suggestions when job responsibilities as an adjunct lecturer continue to expand with the necessity to learn how to teach online? Well, you need to have conversations with your department heads about what you're able to do and draw lines around what's possible. And with your students, you have to create boundaries. I've taught online for a long time and now doing more of it, obviously, in my school, in my normally offline school where I teach. And you have to put parameters around it for yourself because other people are not going to do it for you. They just want from you what they want from you and they're not thinking about it. So it's on you to figure that out, but you really do need to figure it out and talk to other stakeholders about it. Like to students, I'm available from X to Y. These are my office hours. This is what I can do for you. To department heads, here's what I can prepare. Here's how much fits within the scope of what should be expected of me, or have that conversation with them. So good luck with that. I know it's really tough. Speaking of which, I have a faculty meeting to go to, so I've got to cut this off. Yeah, so if you can't see the link, it is in the chat, but the way the chat runs up live, it's a little weird. So you'll be able to see it once I think this video is ended. It's also in your email from Monday. I put it in the email that I sent out on Monday. So if you guys can't see the link to the Creative Engine training, check your email from Monday. It's right there. Or if anything, if you can't find it, then just message me here or email me at contact@jessicaabel.com and I'll send you the link. Hope to see some more of you. It's been really great getting to know you here in this context. And the nice thing about that training is going to be more FaceTime, actual conversation, and learning more about your projects. We've got 4 hours in the training, so there's going to be plenty of time to learn a lot. All right, so I will see you guys on Friday, either at the Creative Engine or just here, and that's fine, and I'm looking forward to that. Friday we are doing, I don't remember what we're doing, but we'll get to it. We're doing chapter 10, and I will see you then. All right, bye guys.